A lot of people are traveling for spring break, or maybe you're taking a trip for the first time in a whole year. And I thought I would do some tips today on travel anxiety. So, hi, I'm Elle Ingalls, creator of the Pressure Free Method, the on the go stress management method. I help professionals and high achieving students who are struggling with stress, anger, and anxiety. They're probably secretly stressing out, and it looks like they're calm and cool on the exterior. So I want to really dive into this travel anxiety thing because I remember reading a study several years ago that showed that if you travel for at least 15 minutes, or 15 minutes or more, you more than likely are going to trigger the stress response at some time in just a short trip like that. So if you commute more than 15 minutes a day, if you take your kids to school and it takes longer than 15 minutes, there's probably something on the route or a feeling like you need to hurry up or you're going to be late. Something is causing you to trigger the stress response. And once you've triggered the stress response, you might not think it's a really big deal because stress is kind of normal these days, but I'm here to say it is not normal. It's not normal to continually keep triggering this stress response. It's responsible for all chronic mental and physical disease. It either causes it or exacerbates it significantly. And so there is a better way. Let's talk specifically about travel, and I got my little whiteboard up today. So let's talk about travel anxiety and some of the things that can cause you to trigger the stress response. So the first is traffic. If there's too much traffic or traffic is going too slowly or too fast for you, those can be reasons that you might trigger the stress response due to traffic. So I just recently moved to a new city. It's pretty amazing. I'd rather drive in New York or New Jersey than here. I don't know what's up with West Michigan, but you guys are driving way too fast. In fact, unfortunately, I just saw that a friend of mine was in a really bad accident. My husband and my son were in a terrible accident on 131 here in West Michigan because people were driving too fast and were distracted. So traffic could be one of your little deals. Watch for traffic. I'm going to give tips at the end. Right now, I'm just going to list some things to be on the lookout for. Notice if you get a little hot about traffic. Feel you're going to be late. There's a school in my neighborhood, and people drive down my road to get to the school. Every single one of those parents is speeding. Every single one of them. And then what's funny is after they drop the child back, when they're coming back, I notice that they're not speeding usually as much, not as high a percentage. So ask yourself if you're feeling like you're going to be late, can you give yourself more of a cushion before you're going to be taking off for your trip? I used to get extremely anxious for flights that I might miss my flight. Especially if I'm traveling to places like Detroit Metro where I could run into commuter traffic, get slowed down. So watch for that too. Are you hurrying up so that you just have to wait for a long time? Any of that can cause you to trigger fight or flight. So watch out for the feeling that you're going to be late. The next is if you're riding with other people and you're the passenger, do you disagree with how the other drivers drive? So do you have issues with how the person who's driving is driving? Are they too close to the vehicles in front of them? Do they seem to be straggling over the middle lane line? Are there things they're doing? Maybe they're jerky with their turns. We all have rules about how to drive. We all have them. And it's really easy to expect everyone else to drive the way we do. I have a lot of that. I have to really watch it because I don't drive the way that my partner drives. And so I have to really watch myself and zip my lips because they've been driving for decades. I should be okay with all that. So if you disagree with how another person who's driving drives, or if they're a new driver, a young driver, a friend of mine's driving today and her son is is training to drive, so he's driving, and you can have a lot of anxiety about someone who is a new driver. So watch out for that. And the last is any sort of complaining in the trip. And this can be applied to ahead of the trip or even the night before a trip. are the emotions about the trip kind of going down? So are people complaining? Is there some what I call negative fake worry? So you're worrying about the trip before you're even on the trip. Most people start negatively fake worrying about travel days, even weeks before the actual trip takes place. So watch for any of that. That's surely going to trigger your fight or flight stress response. So these are some things to look out for, and they're just a few. There's many others. Let's talk for a moment about what does travel do to you. So if you do have travel anxiety, and again, you might not call it out and even know it, but here's some signs. Your gut gets really messed up. Your digestive system isn't working normally. If that happens to you when you travel, then you've been triggering fight or flight. I've helped so many clients travel great without any issues with their digestive system, handling food, handling all the other processes. It's really cool when that isn't an issue for you anymore. And I can speak to that too, because I used to definitely have some travel anxiety, and it's just so cool now to take a trip and not have any worries. So you might physically experience symptoms. You might mentally experience symptoms. If you're very irritated, if you're frustrated, if you are exhausted from trips, like you're taking a long trip and when you get there, you're just so exhausted you can't do anything. That's a sign that you're triggering the stress hormones, because you weren't physically working for the whole day like a construction worker or a farmer. You were just sitting in a car or sitting on the plane. So why are we so tired? There can be social anxiety too if you're taking public transportation. You don't know who you're going to be sitting next to. That can cause a lot of anxiety. Sensory things too, like smells, quality of air, things that are out of your control. Maybe you have travel anxiety because you're not the driver. I've worked with clients who prefer to be the driver. They don't like being passengers because they're not in control of their destiny. So that can be a reason why some people trigger fight or flight. Let's get to some solutions now. The first solutions I have for you are slogans or words that you can start to incorporate in your own mind, or actually say them out loud to the people that you're traveling with too. But the first is, what we don't have, we don't need, or you can buy it. I remember my mom saying this so many times. We would pack and she goes, don't worry, what we don't have, we don't need. What we don't have, we don't need. We sometimes overpack and we don't even use all the things that we bring. And if you're really desperate and you forgot your toothbrush, usually you can buy one in an airport or a little pharmacy or grocery somewhere along your way. So what you don't have, you don't need, or you can buy. So instead of being so anxious about making sure you've packed everything, I've seen that happen so often for people. And now they're exhausted from the anxiety of packing. The trip is not enjoyable at all. Here's a good one. I can take a break anytime. A lot of people when they travel get an overactive bladder situation. And that's because, again, the stress hormones are going to cause your bladder and sphincter muscles to contract and relax, contract, relax. It's going to feel like you have to go to the bathroom a lot. So if you ahead of time think in your mind, I can take a break whenever I want. I can go 20 minutes if I want and take a break. It's really okay. You can pull off at any exit. By the way, if you're traveling on long trips, I was just helping a client with this, who had travel anxiety about the long trips. Remember that a lot of the cars that are coming on the road with you, they're just doing very short trips, like from a couple of exits or so. So if you can pretend that your longer trip is just a series of little local trips, it can kind of relax you there. And in most places in the country, people are friendly, people are nice, and people will help if something happens to you. So let's see. The last one I have is, we'll get there when we get there. It's something I can remember my parents saying too, because back then we didn't have clocks in the car. We just got in the car and we drove. So there wasn't all this looking at the seconds ticking by. Are we going to be there on time? There was none of that. You just got in the car and you drove. And there was a period of time during the oil crisis when the speed limit in New Hampshire on the highways was 55. It really feels great to go 55, by the way. Anything over 60, notice your heart rate is probably going up. So we'll get there when we get there. I have a colleague and a friend whose father was a very ethical accountant, and he never sped. He never went over the speed limit, ever. And if someone asked him about that, like even the speed of traffic or whatever, he goes, I am following the speed limit because I follow rules. He's an accountant, and he was extremely ethical. And sometimes it would drive people crazy, but that was how he was. This was a part of his ethics. So we'll get there when we get there can be a great little phrase. So those are some words that you can start to incorporate in order to lower your travel anxiety. When you're in the heat of the moment, and if you suffer from any road rage, here are some tips for that. The first, and you hear me say this a lot, but it's just to simply relax your abdominal muscles. If you relax your ab muscles, your hands are going to be much softer on the wheel. So relax your ab muscles, your hands are going to be softer, you're going to be a better driver to begin with. Another thing you can do is when something's going on that is starting to make you nervous is you can smile. When you smile, dopamine releases in your outer cortex, in your hippocampus, you're going to be able to think better. So instead of overreacting to small things during your trip, you're just going to be more composed and calmer, so you can choose the correct reaction rather than overreacting. I see people overreact a lot with travel, especially sometimes if they're traveling with someone else, like a child or someone who needs more assistance. They're very nervous about that person getting the assistance they need. In fact, you can probably kind of cut the travel audience in 80-20. 20% of the people are seasoned travelers. Everything is pretty cool. And even if you're a seasoned traveler, by the way, I've seen a lot of travel anxiety there. 80% people are jangled. People are definitely under the influence of stress hormones. And that's why they can be real snippy, real, not very nice, or they might be like yanking at their kids to do something. You'll see a lot of kind of crazy behavior sometimes in airports. And it's usually just because people have triggered the stress response. So I want you to have a great trip if you're going somewhere. I gave these tips to a family once who was going on vacation, and they ended up with a fabulous vacation because so many times we're exhausted. We need a vacation from the vacation because we've triggered fight or flight so much that we actually have a pretty miserable time internally. We're trying to have a great time on the outside, but there's so much that's happening on the inside. So that might be helpful. Oh, I see Leah's coming on here. Debbie, Susan, Al, thank you so much for joining me today. So yeah, travel anxiety is a real thing. I had another client too who had a lot of digestive issues from travel, and she was almost constantly in motion. She owned properties in other countries and was traveling a lot. And for her to not have those issues anymore, it was phenomenal. So if you are tired of being tired from your travel, here are some tips. We'll go over them one more time. So for travel anxiety, watch out for traffic, either too fast or too slow. Whichever bugs you is what you need to look out for. Feel like you're going to be late. Watch out for that. And then disagree with how the other driver drives and complaining. So those are some main things you can take a look out for. And I thank you, Leela, and hi, Debbie. And then these are some phrases. What we don't have, we don't need, or you can buy. I can take a break anytime. We'll get there when we get there. So if we can just kind of move into that. By the way, my son said I became such a pressure-free driver that I was almost too pressure-free after all the things I used to do before. So pressure-free can definitely help you release all that stress and anxiety when you're going on a trip, even if you're commuting 15 minutes or more. So every day, watch for it too, that you're not triggering for silly reasons. So thank you so much for all that love. I love it when there's hearts flying over me. It's so exciting. And I wish you a great pressure-free day. Bye.